All right, with Wayne for a special emergency pod. Ten Hag in. Who's this Ten Hag fella? Do we know much about him, Wayne?
I must confess, when you sent me the message to do an emergency podcast, I was like, "Oh, what? Have we lost the game?" And haven't been made aware of it. But no, if you're not listening, we haven't lost the game unexpectedly. No, yeah, it's Erik Ten Hag. Yeah, he was apparently on the list of candidates to replace himself.
The very extensive list. Yeah. I mean, and a very extensive list of people they seem to have had a conversation with, including Erik Ten Hag. Yeah. By the way, we've got a game in about 26 days. So, first preseason game, 8th of July. Or is that back in training, 8th of July? I forget now. Maybe it's back in training, 8th of July, and then preseason game a little bit after that. Norway first, isn't it? And then the States. Yeah. So, and Ornstein reporting, so he's reliable.
Mm-hmm.
Ornstein is. He got the scoop on this one, reporting that the Ineos team of Ratcliffe, Jean-Claude Blanc, Brailsford, and Wilcox, plus nod, wink, Ashworth and Barada, definitely not working. Just, happened to have accidentally caught wind of the negotiations and discussions. I've decided to keep Erik Ten Hag after apparently having decided to sack him, depending on who you believe in the media. Although it's obviously Steinberg. Jacob Steinberg at The Guardian did the piece day before the cup final, saying they've definitely decided to sack him. And actually reporting in The Athletic basically confirms that, because their in-depth, very lengthy piece on the sort of behind-the-scenes stuff, having spoken to people at the club, says that they had decided to sack him. And in fact, they came very close to sacking him after the Palace defeat and installing an interim at that point, and backed away from doing it. And their first season review meeting, they all agreed they were going to sack him. And somehow between that point and now, they've backed away from that decision and are doubling down on Erik. Yeah. How do you feel about it?
Well, I'll talk about Ten Hag in a second. The reporting, I do want to have a comment on that, because I know Jacob, obviously, there are three sort of elements with reporting, aren't there? There is the truth, there's the lie, speculation, and then there's a reporter being fed something in good faith and believing it's the truth and reporting it. And, any of those things can be true at any given time. I do feel like the press have had a field day with everything. Not necessarily on the back of what Jacob reported, because I think the murmurs were there anyway that week before, and that was kind of what people were trying to say. It was just Jacobs was the big sort of scoop that led everyone to believe that it was definitely going to happen. But then every man in these, for it was just ceaseless on Sky Sports News in particular, not that I was watching it, but they were tweeting about it from different pundits, talking about it, all sort of claiming to have some information, and clearly, like, not everybody did have that information. Now, it looks like there's something in there. Like I said, I've not read the Athletic piece. I've got the summary of it, just of it, it's been pasted elsewhere, and what people have talked about online. And I know the main points in which you're talking about, because these are reports which all these journalists have sort of, Ornstein commented along similar lines on the thing that he did on Sky Sports, which did go on socials. But I just feel like I'm not a big fan of commenting when there's nothing to comment on. And United haven't done that yet, to be fair, apart from they put out a short article with Ten Hag today, so let's say all is well in the camp and looking forward and everything, which I think was kind of a nod to that, like the non-confirmed confirmation. So I'm not a big fan of that as a rule, because I think it sort of feeds the fuel. It kind of gives journalists more room to speculate, like Cave, who's already been proven to not have any real inside track of United.
Zero credibility.
But he's on the biggest network, the biggest sort of television network to put out that kind of news, sort of speculating. Yeah. And they shouldn't be doing that. There's got to be some kind of ethical code there. And I know it's so stupid saying that, but there has to be some kind of ethical code in there. We're talking about people's livelihoods. And Ten Hag has been treated with a very big lack of respect. All this kind of stuff. I mean, there's definitely truth in some of the things. Like, there's got to be, like, perhaps meeting Tuchel's representatives and all that. I'm not sure how far all those, obviously, I'm not completely sure. I'd like to think that some of it's bull because it's hard to get my head around the fact that that's the kind of ownership structure that we've got. I mean, I know that people say it's like sensible forward planning to evaluate all options, but I don't think that's the decent thing to do when you've got a man in position. Sorry, just to get to the shorter point of the longer point I'm making with this is that we've been in this situation before with Van Gaal. The fans, it was very kind of popular that everyone wanted him to stay. That was kind of like the consensus after the final. And like I said, I'm not a fan of the sort of adding to speculation, but after a while it became so incessant that it was obvious that something had to be done to sort of quell that. I think that it's probably been done in the best way that it probably could. I mean, Ornstein is as reliable as it comes with anything. So there's no second guessing it with, like there was with the Jacob piece, thinking what's going to happen next. You know that this is fairly definitive. So I just want to make a few points on that before I talk about Ten Hag. On Ten Hag himself, I do think that it's the right call. It doesn't still feel like it's definitive to the extent that I feel like it's a complete vote of confidence. There's nothing there that says, I know they're talking about an extension, but there's nothing there that gives me complete conviction that we won't be here in 4 or 5 months. But that's fine. That's fine, really, because he's going to be judged on results, and there's a nice groundswell of good opinion on the back of a good performance in the final. There's a nice conviction in that belief of, well, there could be something better there. And he's earned that. He's earned that platform now in that short period of time to A, be backed by transfers, and B, have a little bit of time to get a plan put in place, but nothing lasts forever. And I feel like that 3 or 4 months, what he's bought himself is probably what he deserves. I think that's where I am with it. I don't think it's a thing to say I've got great confidence in the next 3 or 4 years. I don't think it's quite that authoritative position on it, but I do feel like he's got what he's earned, and hopefully that they're going to be good on that.
Okay. Yeah, a few things to unpack there. I mean, on the reporting side of things, I don't know Jacob at all, but we have a let's say a mutual colleague here at NQAT Towers who knows him well, and I think generally speaking, in my interactions with the Guardian editorial staff as well, they are quite conservative, even on sports pages about this. So my sense of that is that it will have been double sourced. The only thing is the Ineos team, so Ratcliffe, Brailsford, Jean-Claude Blanc, now Wilcox, Brother Ashworth don't leak. Like it's not like Edward Wood and even Arnold after him, who are quite liberal with the leaking, and the politics in the executive suite at United has been quite divisive, as I understand it as well. Through people I know who've commented on that. So, but I think there's different times now. So a lot of the press reporting was just pure speculation. I'm not saying Steinberg's piece was. I'm just like a lot of it around there. And there are people at United still in place in executive positions who may not be there, let's say in a few months' time, once the full clearing of house had happened. And maybe a bit more liberal with their commenting as a result, right? And it wasn't based entirely in fact, although I think, if we're to trust the Athletics reporting on this, and I think they are very conservative in terms of how they report, then the United came very close to sacking Ten Hag, and just gave it a little more time, and it was on a knife's edge. He could have gone, or they could have installed Steve McLaren as a interim prior to the cup final because after that Palace defeat, they may have had absolutely zero confidence that they would get anywhere near European places or do anything in the cup final. I think actually at the time that might have been reasonable. Now, we're a month on from then, from that Palace defeat. I think it was May the 12th, wasn't it? The Arsenal defeat, so Palace Arsenal. And in that time, apparently, there's been quite a lot of humility from Ten Hag, and I think this is probably really important, right? So he was quite bullish in his media interviews after the cup final. It's like it was all about the injuries, and you guys have been reporting it wrong. And he was obviously clearly irritated with the pundits. He had to go at Roy Keane live on air, which I quite enjoyed, actually, to be honest. I loved Roy, but I loved that interaction. It was good fun. But behind the scenes, he's apparently been very humble and recognised mistakes have been made. And that probably, like, thinking about how, during my career, how executives behave, that mea culpa, got it wrong, I'm going to do better this time. Here's my analysis of where it's gone wrong. That's going to go down quite well.
Yeah.
Right. And Ratcliffe is quite a traditionalist in business terms. And I suspect that message from Ten Hag probably did sit well with the team, and so, yeah. So that's on that one. I think going forward, they will have to give him a new contract. Otherwise it'll lame up. They're going to have to back him. Now that may come with some different clauses in the contract. So for example, again, widely reported, Ten Hag had a veto on any transfers. Could sign off on transfer himself, but could veto any. I think that will be gone in a new contract. And it's quite clear that there's a sporting structure in place that is very, very different from the one United have had. And he will have to accept a different kind of role. And if he's staying, he's accepted that different kind of role, head coach, with a structure around him. They've been very, very clear, said it over and over again, Ratcliffe has, that they will have a club style. They're going to go, hey, here's how we play. So succession planning for whoever comes post Ten Hag and squad planning is much, much easier, right? So think about Brighton. They just hired an identikit to Roberto De Zerbi.
Yeah.
Would United be in a better position if our last three managers had broadly similar philosophy and broadly similar types of players? Absolutely. We would be. We would be in a better position. I mean, like, they may have been no good as managers, but at least the squad would work. And right now we have a Frankenstein squad, which is, also partly a problem for Ten Hag. He's trying to work around that. So, I think all these things play together. They're going to have to give him a new contract. It will be with a different role, different sporting structure. They'll start working on a transfer planning. It will be on the basis of the type of squad they want, reportedly. Much younger players, so signing players under 24, with a playing style that is consistent and coherent, and we can move forward from there. And like, final point, I mean, you talked about like it's been unfair on Ten Hag, and it kind of has. It's brutal doing this very public review of him and all the other options. But now, they're saying, hey, we're going to be fair to you. We're going to give you another year. With and probably an extra year with the contract as well, probably be a 2-year contract or something like that. We're going to give you a year to prove yourself within this new sporting structure. It's not year one of you, because it can never be year one, but it's a new start. And that's a very fair, given that United lost 19 times last season, that's incredibly fair, I think, for any manager in the league club.
Well, yeah, I think all of that's fair. I think Ineos have been fairly lucky with the way that the sort of reviews period panned out, because through doing nothing, Ten Hag has emerged, like I said at the start, as the strongest candidate for the role. Really, if they've gone man to man, they're not really being alluring. Tuchel's not a very entertaining. He's a choice in terms of there's some success behind him. But he's also damaged goods, and United fans are obviously wary of that, and obviously where he's been as well. De Zerbi, obviously unproven. Potter, not a romantic choice, and Southgate was one that United fans were heavily resisting, because means say that Southgate wouldn't be revisited at some point in the future, because obviously Ratcliffe, Ashworth, and co. In Ashworth will also have his say finally. When that happened, but there's
he's definitely not been having a say. Absolutely no emails have been sent anywhere.
Not from his Newcastle address, that's for sure. All from NA Dan, if you're listening. I don't mean to cast aspersion. Anyway, so the point is that the Southgate road becomes a little bit clearer down, let's say in 6 months' time, if he's unemployed and the temptation's still there in United. Form is still bad. It's a little easier of an option for Ratcliffe to make. Scratch the itch of putting him in charge, see how it goes for an interim period or whatever. I'm speculating over something I don't want to happen. So obviously we want Ten Hag to be successful. So over that period of time, obviously momentum was a big thing. I mean, I'm with you. We probably said it at the time that I really felt like Palace could have been the end point for him. I was surprised that he was still in charge for the Arsenal game, but he was, and he rode the wave of that. Everything happened as well as it could have done to the end of the season. You couldn't have put an interim man in charge and that gone any better than what it did. So he had all of that sort of conviction now of the belief of everything that's going for him, and obviously the conviction of everything that he's been saying with, if a few players return, it has a dramatic impact on the style. And we've known that. I mean, it's harder to it's harder on the palate when you're watching it happen in real time, when all those players are out and you're thinking, could they really make considerable difference to what we're seeing? The answer is yes, of course, because we've seen that. It's just difficult to accept when you're watching Coventry come back from 3-0 down or Palace turn us over 4-0. You think it's inconceivable that one or two players can make such a dramatic difference, but they do. And that is because, a great phrase that you used there, Frankenstein squad, that is still the case. It's something that, if anyone has been awake long enough to listen to me bore them all season, I was saying this right at the start after the Arsenal game. I think I was on this podcast where I was saying, I expect a very bumpy ride with these injuries because there's such a disparity of quality between the one thing that you said that I do find interesting, well, all of the things you said I find interesting, but just on that last point that you said was about the dictation of style of play. Now, I know I've studied, coaches have worked at United for decades. They don't have a real straightforward way of putting it across what United's identifiable style of play is. There are key traits to that, but nothing like you would say, I don't know, like Pep Guardiola's style of football is pretty obvious. Jurgen Klopp's style of football is pretty obvious. You know how to explain it, you know how to describe it, you know how to teach it. It takes a good teacher to put it across, but you know what it is and you know what it is to look at it. United's is fairly more complex than that. And without wanting to sound really reductive, there is a large element of vibe ball about it. We saw it with Ollie, like something that you can't really define, but it's there. Like you can't really explain Steve Bruce scoring 2 goals in the last minute to win against Sheffield Wednesday. You can't explain why Makeda comes off the bench to score against Aston Villa. There's a method in there, and obviously if you could explain it, you can extract it and really go to town with it, then obviously you've got the key to the secret. I do find it interesting that there's someone dictating what that is, and that person or peoples will be Jason Wilcox, Barada, and Ashworth, and Ratcliffe himself is going to have a say saying that, because I think he's got this idea. He might be right. There's like quintessential Britishness to it. I feel like that's the way that it comes across. Maybe there are some traits with that, but I do find it a little bit concerning, because if they've got it wrong, if they've got a completely wrong idea of what it is. For example, I don't think United's crowd is completely resistant to change, right? After the Moyes experiment, Van Gaal came in, he had a very completely different way of playing football, different to anything we'd ever seen. And we weren't initially resistant to the idea of seeing that. Remember the first pre-season under Van Gaal, where the football looked like from another planet. And then it became proper football. It wasn't so good. It was slow, it's ponderous, just didn't translate to Premier League football very well. But the point I'm saying is we were willing to give that a chance. We were willing to give this big diversion from what we knew and were familiar with a big chance. then by the time Mourinho comes around, kind of willing. Well, I'm not saying that I was willing to do a thing that I thought back about for a long time in the latter period of his time in charge, that you accept a lack of entertainment in exchange for success. And when one outweighs the other, like, when we weren't getting success and the football was still bad and the rot was setting in very quickly, then it's time to go. I mean, the point I'm saying there, that Ollie comes in, there is something there, regardless of people saying, he can't coach, blah, blah, blah. There was something identifiable with the core of what we recognise about Manchester United. There are at times things that are identifiable about the core of Manchester United and the Ten Hag. And funnily enough, I do feel like maybe the last 6 months, we are seeing more of that. Not through the style of play on the pitch, but on the attitude. So there are things like Casemiro going in the last minute against Forest, Ahmad against Liverpool in the Cup, the way that we had the backs to the wall performance in the final. These are traits, and obviously it's not something that you can say is a style of football, but it's a trait of personality that's associated with the club. That I think he's worked well for everyone involved. Ten Hag, Ineos, Ratcliffe, because they're all investing faith in that now. I'm just saying, so there's something.
Go. Yeah, no, I mean, sorry. I don't think they're going to base a multi-billion-pound transaction on, Ratcliffe going, I think we should play, high-tempo Gegenpressing or mid-block possession-based or beat the press. Or I don't think it's going to be that. But I also don't think it's like vibes ball.
No, yeah.
Let's all feel good about things and scored last-minute winners. I think it's probably much more about squad and succession planning and what they believe to be a better value way of building a squad and going from where we are now to competing at the top again, or knocking City off their perch, as Ratcliffe said in I think his interview with the BBC. So I think that is much more about that, right? So it's not like, hey, Barcelona, basically their high possession based football is from the days of Cruyff, and they took the Dutch school and imprinted it onto and added some Spanish flavor to it, and that's their thing, and that's what they tried to do, and it's kind of very, very identifiable. Or now Brighton have picked a succession of managers who play high ball retention football. They've almost doubled down on that, I'd say. Whereas Ten Hag is none of those things, right? It's like he's much more of a chameleon in terms of his tactical approach. Even at Ajax, domestically credible high possession football, averaged over 60% in his final season, but that's because they were the dominant team. In Europe that season, when they had the great run to the semi-final, played transitional football all the way, right? So he just adapted. And so that's his nature as a football manager. And maybe it's taken us all a little while to kind of work that out. I was like, I remember we talked about it. I talked about it with Dan as well. We're like, when are we going to understand what Ten Hag ball is? Well, I think there's not a thing to understand because he's a bit of a chameleon and he adapts. Now, does that fit with a view that, we want a kind of, club style? I think that's the precise words Ratcliffe used, and he may be, he may be mistranslating it from some of his advisors and stuff like that. Well, we're going to see, aren't we? They've asked Ten Hag to be humble and also fit into this new system, and Ten Hag has gone, yeah, I can do that. I can live with that. Then it's a good blueprint. If Ten Hag is a bit unsure and really he's thinking another way, and he's got a kind of his mind on some players that aren't the ones that the data science team and Ashworth and the recruitment team have, then we're going to have a problem, aren't we? Because there's not going to be a nice fit. And it's going to then be very, very easy for Ineos to go, yeah, okay, we're going to bring in our man. Yeah. I don't know if that's Southgate, because I don't know what his style is either. Fucking boring as far as I can tell watching England.
Yeah.
So, yeah, his football's about as boring as his waistcoats, and so's he. I don't know. Sorry, I'm ranting about Southgate, which is unfair because
you don't need to do that. We've been spared doing that for at least 5 months. You don't need to do that just yet.
Ranting about Southgate. Yeah. We've got it coming up. England, who have England got? Slovakia, Serbia, Denmark. Is that right? Something like that.
But can't profess.
That's how much attention I'm paying to it. Yeah. 3-1-1 draws and out of the tournament. Is what I'm predicting. Yeah. Well, look. I mean, we'll see. It's in a sense, I think it's quite a brave decision from the Ineos team because the easiest thing would have been to fire him and go and pick someone else, right? That's what all football clubs do, and especially on change of ownership. It's just universally the thing you do. You bring your own man in, someone you trust. Now, it might have been unfair on Ten Hag because of the speculation for the last 3 weeks or so, and unfair that they've gone and basically interviewed potential replacements. It's kind of humiliating, isn't it? But because they've got to this position where they've gone, okay, we think Ten Hag's the best option, given all the options out there. It's based on a thorough analysis of what is possible, not vibes, So, time will tell whether we believe that this new structure is the right one and it's going to work well. It's what we've been asking for basically 20 years under Glazer ownership. Let's have a proper football structure. Let's not have Joel fucking Glazer making all the football decisions. Although apparently, so says the Athletic, he has been kept informed. So, just informed, hopefully. Send him the carrier pigeon now and again. But interesting times ahead. But it's based on something thorough.
No, yeah,
and deliberate.
The other point I wanted to make about that was the point that we've made a few times this season about being at this point many times post Ferguson. Not necessarily in times, someone might say, we spent a little longer under a term manager, a little shorter under a different one. But we've always got to this bump in the road, which I've spoke about, where a manager's got the opportunity. And to be fair, even when all this review was going on and all those decisions like Sancho and Ronaldo were happening, Ten Hag was back to make very difficult calls, and they were all in favour of the manager. Now he's at this little bump again where there's obviously more turnover of the squad to get away from that, like you said, Frankenstein nature of it. And we're at that point. Maybe I'm not saying it's going to be a final call for that squad, but the final one in terms of he would have complete control of the direction of it. So after 2 years in charge, after this number of transfer windows, after such a tumultuous time where it looks like it could go, but now he's got the backing of the ownership structure. Now it should be clear to all the squad that he's the one who calls the shots. That's the healthiest position, and on the back of a trophy win that had a really good feel factor about it. That's the healthiest position the club have been in since Ferguson left. That from all the turmoil of the last couple of weeks, that's where we are now. So we've got a reason to be optimistic about that. Players will go. It will give Ten Hag a greater sort of stranglehold over the squad. In terms of, I'm talking about like standards and things like that. Like Rashford, the demand on him to up his game, and obviously he's going to have an internal struggle with that, with the omission from the England squad. So really, there are a lot of those kind of things that theoretically do put us in the healthiest position that we are. Now, I'm saying theoretically because there's still no guarantee that it's going to be a massive success. Anything can happen with the form of the players because, let's face it, I'm still not convinced that it's a squad that is good enough to, qualify for the Champions League in successive seasons, let alone qualify for the Championship. So you've still got to have a turnover of players to get to that point. Now, what you've got to have in there is an honest squad. Do I think that this squad are playing for Ten Hag? Well, yeah, I do think for the last 4 months, that's the one thing that we've seen, regardless of how bad that disparity has been. I don't think that you can challenge that. So, in terms of that position, like, I don't know if that's something that Ineos will have considered that deeply because they weren't in charge when all those last changes were made, and obviously it's had this snowball effect to lead to the squad being in such a mess. But now we're here, it makes more sense, regardless whether or not they even considered this. It makes more sense for him to be the man who oversees this month, because even if it goes wrong in this next 6 months, I still think the squad will be in a much. I feel like the club and the squad will be in a much better place in 6 months for having taken this risk. Even if the results are terrible and the performances are terrible, the next 3 I'd still feel like it's the soundest investment we could have made going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all fair. I mean, the challenge is that Ten Hag face. I mean, they're couple-fold. Well, let's say in terms of squad rejuvenation, United's financial position is not awesome, right? It's a little hard to put a number on it, and I think there's a lot of speculation out there. And the reason why it's a little hard to put a number on it isn't because we don't really understand what the squad cost is, because we do, because we can look back over 22, 23, 24, so year end, and look at the amortization rates on the both wages, which has come down quite a lot in the last 2 years, and transfer fees, which has gone up a lot, right? So we can have a guesstimate on that and think about where United's position is. What we don't know is how much they're going to claim for other expenses and costs and so on, allowable expenses. So we don't have an exact number, but given that United, as of the end of the last accounts we saw, owed £280 million in transfer fees, like, I think we can make a fair assumption that it's not going to be a £300 million summer where we go buy 5, really big high profile players. That's unlikely to happen. Sale of Greenwood's going to help, because you can book all that money and spend it straight away. And there'll be other sales, right? And that's a long way of saying he's got a bit of challenge in terms of refreshing the squad. It's been reported that the Ineos team are looking at this as a 3 or 4 window sort of transformation. I think that's probably fair in terms of just the finances as well as the ability to execute on that many deals. So he's got that. He's obviously going to have to get rid of some players that aren't performing for him or don't want him there. The factions that weren't behind him, they'll have to go. Sancho's the most obvious one, but apparently others too. And then it's the credibility thing is an issue, because he was so, and I think the biggest black mark against his name last season, despite all the caveats of injuries, was that he went for a particular style of play, which didn't suit the players we've got, had disastrous results, 19 defeats all competitions, and he doubled down on it. And it wasn't until the last month of the campaign where apparently McLaren and Mitchell van der Gaag have gone, hey, we need to change this up. And you can see Arsenal, Newcastle, and Brighton was a disaster. And the cup final, like, they've gone for a different style, haven't they, there? And apparently that's his team going, hey, that time we had a rethink, right? So he's got that challenge as well. Does he have, can he pick a style and stick with it, and make that work? And then, final point, with the fans, his bank of credibility is quite low. Despite the 2 trophies, I think you will see, there'll be a disparity between the online reaction and Old Trafford. Old Trafford's always behind the managers. But as soon as he loses a few games, it's going to go from, we feel good about the cup final to, oh God, we're stuck with this guy really, really quickly. And because his credibility or his bank of credit quite low, right? And that's going to be a tough one, because we'll see how much Ineos believe, or we can just say United, right? How much the new United football executive team, really believes in that, or whether it's just like, well, we haven't really met anyone who we really believe in, so we'll just stick with the guy we know for the time being, right? So, and that'll be kind of interesting test, won't it? Because United are going to lose games, right? It's not going to be a perfect squad by the time we start next season.
Absolutely. A lot of still patience required. Obviously, they've been of a big benefit to Ineos that they didn't rush into a decision a month ago today, and that they waited that little bit of time after the final to let the dust settle, because I think it's been to their credit and it's helped them. Ten Hag's credit that he's conducted himself the way that he has. I think you have that, he does a few harshly worded comments he'd come out with after the final, saying, I'll go somewhere else and keep winning, which is, you do want to see that from a manager. You do want to see them be a bit more confident and bullish about it, regardless of what he said behind closed doors and coming down and sort of agreeing to work in the conditions that were being newly imposed on him. I mean, I still feel more optimistic. I don't feel like I've got any great conviction. Well, I mean, we're here having this conversation because we feel like it's important to mark the news that the Athletic have reported that the manager's staying. I still don't feel as if it's I don't feel like we needed it. There was that element of something needs to be addressed in a way. This is as strong as it needs to be because it's come from the reputable source that it's come from. So that's strong enough. United don't need to acknowledge it. It's all fine. But there's still that doubt for me. Like you've been saying there, it's not fickle. It's just the reality of the situation and the nature of what it is. The cup win has earned him a little credit, not a huge amount of credit. That the credit from last season had all but dissipated by the time of he'd gone by the Bournemouth game. Basically, it's a week to week thing of like the next big defeat could be trouble, and he sort of skated through thin ice for the rest of the season. Now the cup final win, he's got a bit of credit in the bank, but it's still not enough. Having said, just to return to the point I said earlier, because I do want to conclude my thoughts on this with saying that I do feel like it's a really positive place that United are in terms of all things being considered in comparison to where they've been post-Ferguson. I do feel like that. But realistically, you look at this and think, that doesn't mean that he's got another 3 years and this is all plain sailing and we're going to win a title. This means that there are significant problems. He's got a fair chance to prove that it was all injuries, but that fair chance now has got to be answered with a definable style. I mean, it might be imposed by Wilcox and co, but he's got to show that he knows what he's doing and to show the demonstration of those players being there and them playing the way that he wants to play, because I guess that buys into what they want. So all of these things, he's on like a new trial period basically, and it's not going to be a year-long trial period. It's going to be a few months. You're going to see how it goes. I do think that's the best that we could have hoped for. I don't know what else we could be asking for in the scenario. You don't ask for it's not Ferguson. You don't ask for a manager to be given an indefinite period of time. The bank of success there.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and I feel like I'm sounding negative about it, but I do feel really positive about it. I think everyone should be.
It's ridiculous. It's realistic, Wayne. I think. I mean, if you think about it, it's a very long time for the takeover to happen, or partial takeover, and I still strongly suspect it will be a full takeover within the next 3 years or 2.5 years or so. But we've really only had 6 months since Ratcliffe's team has been in situ, and they made a lot of big calls. Right, they shipped out the CEO, the interim CEO, the CFO, the chief strategy officer, who wasn't really anything to do with football. They brought in a new head physio. I assume there's going to be a few medical appointments given what happened last season, especially since Luke Shaw threw them under the bus as well this week. And then most of the interesting comments by Shaw there. Yeah. So a lot of big calls. They've already started the review of the stadium. They've appointed a new CEO and we think, a new technical director in Wilcox, and a new sporting director or director of football will be coming in Ashworth once they agree a fee. They made a big decision on the manager. They've been very clear about their decision-making MO. We're going to walk to the right decision, not run to the wrong one. Now, whether you believe that is the right approach or not, they very clearly said that. And they have made a change in the way we're going to do recruitment. That's a lot of work in 6 months. I mean, anyone who's worked in a corporate, making those kind of decisions is really hard because you've got to align a lot of people. Now, United's 1,000-person company and much, much smaller on the kind of core executive football. It's really not many people, right? So that allows you to make a few more quicker decisions, but there's a lot gone on there. But to come back to your point about feeling positive, we're now in a place where we do have that much more modern sporting structure, not quite all in place yet, but soon. We have we think a very clear ethos on transfer policy. Don't have as much money as we'd like, but hey, we're going to have to work through the mistakes of the last few years in order to get to a better position. And we're saying, hey, this guy's the manager, and he can put up the results or he'll probably be out, but within the environment of a modern sporting structure that every other top club in Europe has, so reasons to be optimistic, many. Now, if Ten Hag's training regime is as intense as it apparently has been, it causes a bunch more injuries and that screws up his ability to play in the way he wants, he'll be out the door. If he can't get on board with taking on some players that maybe he didn't personally identify or know, he'll be out the door. If the results aren't, acceptable enough to make United a top 4 team, and obviously so by Christmas, he'll be out the door, right? I just don't think he has the credit in the bank to not be under quite a lot of pressure quite quickly. But it doesn't mean we're starting from a better place than we've been at any point in years and years and years. And that's not just the afterglow of winning the cup final. That's saying these decisions have been made that had to be made. And we've got a clear direction of travel now. You're in the boat or you're out of it. And they've decided that, Ten Hag's the captain, to stretch that analogy a bit too far. So, yeah, there you go. Exciting stuff. Dan will be disappointed that Thomas Frank hasn't been appointed. He seems to be big on Thomas Frank. They apparently interviewed him. I was a bit unsure on Thomas Frank because, played nice football in the Championship and played pretty ugly football in the Premier League. And he's a massive dickhead. Dickhead. What a twat. What a twat. And the rest of the others, I'm like, De Zerbi, I don't know whether that kind of press baiting football's very exciting. I think we might have all been bored quite quickly with that one. Tuchel, reservations like everyone else, short-termist, and maybe that's just the environments he's worked in, but yeah. Pochettino, United have rejected him 4 times. Now there's got to be a reason. I mean, it's 4 times they could have appointed him, and every time they've not done that. So, Potter and Southgate, no thank God. Bullet dodged for now, at least. So, all right, I guess we've done that one. Emergency pod, Ten Hag in, and we can all look forward to next season. We've got about a month before they're all back in training. Exciting. We've got the Euros to look forward to. Will you be watching Germany versus Scotland on Friday?
I probably will. I'm more excited for, 6 days until the fixtures are really... not that I'm excited about that, but I'm more excited about that than the Euros, which tells you my general level of excitement for that. No, it'll be a good tournament. I'll watch it, Ed, and I'll get excited as it goes on. Let's not.
All right, that's good enough.
Yeah, I'm not going to bring it down anymore. But
thanks a lot, everyone. Thought we'd get this out. I will be back with a conversation about FC United next. It's their 20th season coming up. So they'll be celebrating that. So yeah, I'll be talking to some people there. And thanks for listening. Catch you again soon.